In a classroom in San Juan, a child learns a single word for the island's first people: extinct. The Taíno met the Spanish, the lesson goes, and within a generation they were gone, erased, remembered only behind museum glass and in stone plazas the jungle reclaimed. It is a clean story, and for 5 centuries almost no one questioned it. But when scientists finally read the DNA of ordinary Puerto Ricans, they found something the textbooks never predicted. The people who were supposed to have vanished had never left at all. For generations, this was the accepted history, printed in Spanish textbooks and woven into the way the island understood itself. Columbus arrives in 1493. He steps onto the beaches of an island the Taíno call Borican, and he renames it. What follows in the history books is a straight line downward. War, hunger, and a wave of European diseases the Taíno had never met and could not survive. Then came the numbers that seemed to close the case. By the 1530s, colonial officials counting the indigenous population of Puerto Rico recorded barely 1,500 people where there had once been tens of thousands, a nation reduced to a rounding error in a ledger. To the Spanish administrators filling out those census pages, the conclusion looked obvious. The Taíno were finished, and so the word extinct entered the record and stayed there, repeated so often, for so long, that it hardened into fact. It became the thing everyone knew. The trouble with things everyone knows is that no one thinks to test them. There is a reason a story like that survives. Extinction is convenient for the people who cause it. If the first inhabitants of an island are gone, truly gone, then no one is left to make a claim. There is no one to owe the land back to. No rival memory pressing against the official one. No debt sitting on the conqueror's books. The dead do not petition. A conquered people who disappear entirely are far easier to build a colony on top of than a conquered people who endure, marry into your bloodline, and quietly outlast you. History, the saying goes, is written by the winners, and the winners had every reason to write this particular ending in ink. So the extinction of the Taíno was recorded not as a question, but as a closed chapter. It would take modern genetics, reading a text far older than any ledger, to reopen it. To understand what was actually lost and what wasn't, stand for a moment on that shore before the sails appear. Picture a Taíno village on the coast of Borican near the end of the 15th century. The houses are round, timber and thatch, arranged around an open plaza of packed earth where the community gathers. Fields of cassava run back from the settlement, the root they grind into a bread that keeps for weeks in the tropical heat. Fishing nets dry in the sun. Children sleep in woven cotton beds slung between the posts of the house, beds the Taíno call hammock. A leader they call a cacique settles disputes and speaks with the carved spirits of the ancestors. This is not a small or fragile society. Across the islands of the Greater Antilles, the Taíno number in the hundreds of thousands, a connected world trading goods and stories across open water. And then, on a morning like any other, something appears on the horizon that no one in the village has words for. Sails. Ships larger than anything ever seen in these waters, carrying men in metal who believe they have found the edge of Asia. The people on the beach cannot know it, but the world they are standing in has just ended. Everything after this is aftermath. The collapse, when it came fast. The Spanish wanted gold, and they wanted labor, and they built a system to take both. Under the encomienda, Taíno men and women were handed out to colonists and worked in the rivers and the fields until they broke. But the deadliest weapon the Europeans carried was one they never aimed: disease. smallpox and measles moved through communities with no inherited defense against them, and they killed on a scale that violence alone never could. Whole villages emptied in a single season. For a while, the Taíno wondered whether these newcomers might be gods, or at least immortal. The account that has come down to us tells of a group who decided to test that belief around 1511, holding a Spaniard named Salcedo underwater until he drowned, then watching the body for days to be certain the man could truly die. When he did not rise, the fear broke, and the island rose in open revolt under a cacique remembered as Aguaybana the Younger. The rebellion was crushed with cannon and steel, and here is where the tidy version of history takes its fatal shortcut. The uprising failed, the population cratered, the census shrank, and everyone concluded the story was over. But a people can be defeated without being erased. Some survived. And what happened to those survivors is the part the textbooks got wrong. For most of the 20th century, there was no way to check. Then, in the years around 2000, a geneticist named Juan Carlos Martínez-Cruzado at the University of Puerto Rico set out to do something no one had done properly before. He would go looking for the Taíno, not in the ground, but in the living. His tool was mitochondrial DNA. Think of it as a single unbroken thread, a strand of genetic material passed down only from a mother to her children, and from her daughters to theirs, running back through the centuries almost unchanged. Your mitochondrial DNA is a signature written by your mother's mother's mother, a line that quietly ignores every father in the story. Trace that thread far enough, and it points to one woman, deep in the past. Martínez-Cruzado ran an island-wide survey funded by the U.S. National Science Foundation, sampling hundreds of Puerto Ricans chosen to represent the whole population. When the results came back, they broke the textbook in half. Roughly 61% of Puerto Ricans carried Native American mitochondrial DNA. Not a trace, not a rounding error, but a clear majority, their deepest maternal line running straight back to the island's first people. Now, honesty matters here, because it is what separates evidence from wishful thinking. That thread follows only one ancestor out of thousands. A person can carry a Taíno maternal line and still have mostly European and African ancestry across the rest of their genome, and most Puerto Ricans do. The number does not mean the island is secretly Taíno, but it does mean something the extinction story swore was impossible. The mother's line survived in the majority of the population, all the way to the present day. If you find this as strange and as quietly moving as I did, this is exactly the kind of buried history this channel exists to dig up. What Martínez-Cruzado had found was a ghost in the blood. What came next would give that ghost a face. A maternal thread can tell you a line survived. On its own, it cannot show you the person at the other end. For that, scientists needed something far harder to find. An actual ancient Taíno preserved well enough to read. In 2018, an international team led by the researcher Hannes Schroeder announced they had done exactly that. In a cave on the Bahamian island of Eleuthera, a place called Preacher's Cave, archaeologists had recovered the remains of a woman who lived around 1,000 years ago, at least 5 centuries before Columbus was born. From a single tooth, the team pulled enough intact genetic material to reconstruct her entire genome, reading it more than 12 times over to be sure of nearly every letter. It was the first complete ancient human genome ever recovered from the Caribbean, a photograph developed from a negative that had been sitting in the dark for 1,000 years. Then came the comparison that mattered. When they set her genome beside the DNA of people living in the Caribbean today, one population stood out. Living Puerto Ricans were more closely related to this 1,000-year-old woman than to any other indigenous group on Earth. As one of the scientists put it, the ancient Taíno individual looked almost like a cousin of the ancestors of modern Puerto Ricans. Be precise about what that proves. She was a Bahamian woman, not a direct Puerto Rican grandmother, and a cousin is not a straight line. But the signal was unmistakable, and for the first time, it was drawn from ancient bone rather than modern guesswork. The blood on the island today runs, in part, from the people who were there before the ships arrived. So here is the twist the winner's history could never account for. The Taíno were not erased. They were absorbed. In the brutal, unequal world the Spanish built, Taíno women bore children who carried their mother's mitochondrial thread forward, even as the culture around them was dismantled and renamed. The people did not vanish so much as dissolve into the population that became Puerto Rico, hidden in plain sight, mislabeled as extinct while walking the same streets as everyone else. And they survived somewhere else too, somewhere you would never think to look. In the words. When you say hurricane, you are speaking Taíno, from Juracan, their name for the storm spirit that ruled the sea. When you say hammock, you are naming the woven bed slung in that village on the shore. Canoe, barbecue, tobacco. Fragments of a supposedly dead language, spoken every day by people who have no idea they are quoting the island's first inhabitants. One last honest note, because this history deserves it. DNA can prove ancestry, but it cannot, by itself, define identity. Being Taíno was never only a question of blood, and today there are communities across the Caribbean who claim that heritage as living culture, not laboratory result. The genome answers one question: whether the line endured. It does not get the final word on who the Taíno are. It only proves they are not gone. Picture one more scene, in the present this time. A Puerto Rican opens a DNA test on a laptop, the kind millions of people order out of ordinary curiosity. They scroll past the percentages, the European share, the African share, and then they reach the maternal line, the mother's mother's mother stretching back and back. And there, at the very bottom, is a woman who lived on this island before Columbus had a name for it. Not a museum exhibit, not a closed chapter. An ancestor. The Taíno were declared extinct by the people who conquered them, in documents written to make that conquest final. But extinction, it turns out, was a verdict handed down by the winners. The DNA never agreed. It had been carrying the truth quietly the whole time, waiting 500 years for someone to finally read it. If stories like this one belong on your feed, you already know what to do. The island's first people are still here. They always were.